Good morning. Today we're going to look at the first three things that the Israelites implemented under the leadership of Nehemiah when they returned to the Lord. And we're going to extrapolate those things to say if those are the three important things for them to correct, those must be important things for us to correct in our own lives. So we're going to start in chapter 10, verse 30. We will not give our daughters in marriage to the surrounding peoples, and we will not take their daughters as wives for our sons. So let's pause right there, and we're going to see the first thing. This passage does not speak to interracial marriage. Let's just get that out in the open. When Old Testament passages are talking about not marrying other peoples, it's more about being set apart as a people of God and not necessarily that intermarrying is wrong. What they want to do is they want to set apart their religion with the other religions. And what we see here is when this is condemned in the Bible, you see it like in the case of Solomon, where he does intermarry and they lead him away from God. So it's not the act itself, it's following that path down to its ultimate conclusion, straying away from the Lord. The New Testament talks to this. We're going to turn real quick to 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 14 to 16. It says, "Don't become partners with those who do not believe. For what partnership is there between righteousness and lawlessness? Or what does a believer have in common with an unbeliever?" So here we're not saying don't associate with these people, ignore these people. What he's saying is don't become partners, or other translations say don't be unequally yoked, meaning a long-term relationship or close partnership as in marriage. So the reason is because when you're unequally yoked, you're going to pull in one direction. And we see that time and time again. Now, Jesus ate with tax collectors and sinners, and we know that Paul associated with people who weren't Christian all the time, so we should continue to do those things as well. But the key is don't be partnered long-term with these people, because you're going to have that unequal yoke, and you're going to be slowly pulled in that direction. So that's what this is referring to in Nehemiah 10:30. So let's go on. What's the second thing that we see? Starting in verse 31. When the surrounding peoples bring merchandise or any kind of grain to sell on the Sabbath day, we will not buy from them on the Sabbath day or a holy day. We will also leave the land uncultivated. In the 7th year, we'll cancel every debt. We will impose the following commands to ourselves. Okay, so let's pause right there. The second thing we see is the reestablishment of the Sabbath day, and then also the year of Jubilee, where they release all debts and they take a year off and they don't cultivate the land. So these are Old Testament things that were in Deuteronomy. They're the laws of Moses that the people had strayed away from, and now they're bringing back. I think it's important for us to know the second thing they implemented was we're bringing back the Sabbath day. How easy is it for us in our society, a 24/7 society, to forget the Sabbath day? We need to bring it back into our lives. And here's a little behind the scenes. Pastors work Sundays. And so the Sabbath day for us isn't necessarily Sunday, but it is a dedicated day of rest. So let's take that day and set it aside wholly unto the Lord. I think it's important for us to rest, but also look at the Sabbath day every 7th year, every 7th day. So I think we can extrapolate that and say every 7th hour should be an hour of rest. If you're going 100% all day long, 6 days a week, you're going to burn yourself out. For every 3.5 hours of work, there should be 30 minutes of rest in your day to recharge. I think that's vitally important to remember. And I know we're all locked at home, but sometimes being at home and taking care of your family is work. Just because you're not going to an office doesn't mean you're not working. Don't forget to set aside time for the Lord and to rest. Now, let's finish this up. It says, we will impose the following commands on ourselves: to give 1/8 of an ounce of silver yearly for the service of the house of our God, the bread displayed before the Lord, the daily grain offering, the regular burnt offering, the Sabbath and the new moon offerings, the appointed festivals, the holy things, the sin offerings to atone for Israel, and for all the work of the house of our God. We have cast lots among the priests, Levites, and people for the donation of wood by our ancestral families at the appointed times each year. They are to bring the wood to our God's house to burn on the altar for the Lord our God, as is written in the law. We will bring the first fruits of our land and of every fruit tree to the Lord's house year by year. So we're going to stop here. We're going to come back to this tomorrow. But the third thing that we see is that they reestablish the giving of their tithes and offerings to the Lord. And specifically in verse 35, it's the first fruit offering. So we're going to dive into that more tomorrow. But what we can see today is the three things that they said, these are the most important things to correct. Let's examine these things in our own life and see if we are living in the way that we should. Don't be unequally yoked to unbelievers. Next, honor the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Third, give your tithes and offerings to the Lord faithfully. Are we doing those three things? If not, I don't need to tell you what to do. You know what to do. The only thing is, do it. The Lord be with you today.